Hello, Internet. Thank you for joining on this rainy day in California. We'll be broadcasting from a few locations today, as perhaps the power will stay on. If it drops out for some reason, it wasn't your fault. We're going to blame PG&E. Anyway, my name is Colin McDowell. I'm here with the amazing Luca Zadra, and we'll be talking about the McDSP APB. That's the analog processing box. Oh, yeah. What's not to like? Don't worry. You're only going to have to put up with me for a few minutes, and I'll hand the rest of it over to Luca, where he's going to walk us through an amazing session that might use a few APB plugins, and it's going to sound great. Okay. Are you with me? Good. In to recap, today's February 17th, 2026, and it's 11 a.m. or a few minutes afterwards. That's me on the left, the guy who looks a lot older now, and the guy on the right with lots of muscles who likes to hike everywhere. Remember, everybody, that there's two things you get from this webinar. One is the APB is amazing, and you should buy 10 of them. And the secondly, if Luca Zadra ever offers to take you on a hike somewhere, be sure you're really, really fit, like you can run marathons, because if you can't, you might not make it back. Anyway, moving right along with the webinar. The APB. Oh, yeah. The APB is a programmable analog processor. We make plugins for it, and you get them for free as a registered APB customer. And we keep making more and more and more. And each of these processors does a different effect that you can run through your APB for the joy of analog processing with the convenience of software control. Oh, yeah. It's the world's first programmable analog processor. What's not to like? And that's what it looks like. Wait a minute. There's just a power button? Yeah, it's green. That's my favorite color. Get over it. There's an 8-channel version and a 16-channel version. You can daisy chain up to 5 of these guys together. So if you say you had like 5 APB16s on one Thunderbolt bus, that would give you 80 at 80 channels of analog processing under complete software control. Wow. Oh, yeah, I got some awards. Great, fine. The back. Wow, there's not a lot here. There's just word clock because, yes, you should be syncing it to your audio interface. And you accomplish that through word clock. And you'll note there's 2 Thunderbolt ports on the back of each APB unit. That's so you can daisy chain them together. Go from your computer to the first APB, then add the first APB to the second APB, and onwards and so forth. Hot dang, hot dang. It's that easy. The inside shot that everybody wants to see. Wow. Yes, those boards at the bottom there on the lower right-hand corner, you have the Thunderbolt board. In the middle, you see those 2 word clock B and C connectors are sticking out the back. That's like the main board. No power supply. Then the big guy with all those beautiful red WEMA caps. You can even see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. That's a 16-channel APB right there. So how does it work? You just bring up an APB plugin in your computer. The APB plugin will take your audio signal, generate a control signal, marry them together, and send them over Thunderbolt into your APB unit. That's the Thunderbolt card there in the lower right-hand corner. From the Thunderbolt card, it goes to the main board, where we distribute it to all the 16 channels. Convert the audio signal from digital to analog. The analog control signal will then set up the whole analog channel, and you'll go through one of these channels from the bottom up to the top, comes down through the middle, back through no less than 3 saturation circuits per channel that we, of course, selectively program and select for you to make it sound amazing, back into the main board, back into the Thunderbolt card, and back into your DAW. So as an end user, you just see it as another plugin, but we're doing all the interface connectivity for you behind the scenes. Automatically, even delay compensation is handled. Awesome. Oh, moving on. Okay, I talked about the hardware. What did I miss? Let's see. Yep, it's a premium analog system. We use 32-bit conversions. It's compatible with Thunderbolt 2, 3, 4, and 5. It's got McDSP patented technology. It's made right here in California. How about that software? Well, as I mentioned, the APB is controlled from plugins, whether you use AX host or AU or VST3. It'll come up like any other plugin that you have, and it'll have full session recall. You have sample accurate automation, automatic delay compensation. Ooh, there's even a low latency mode for Pro Tools, so you can track with it. No way. Yes way. All right. And what do they look like? Fabulous question. Let's go through a wonderful glamour shot collage of all the APB plugins you get so far with an APB 8 or APB 16. Like the chicken head compressor. Oh, the C673 dynamic range compressor. Oh, yeah. We have, what's this guy? This looks like the C18 compressor. Oh, the L18 limiter, the LMU tube limiter. What tubes? No, there are no tubes inside the APB, but we can emulate them and put it through an analog circuit. Yes, that sounds really cool. I am glad you agree. The MU tube compressor, What? A mixing console? Yeah, we don't do analog summing, but we do allow you to connect up to some number of channels. I believe it's now up to 48 channels through a pile of APBs, and you can control them from the larger mixer interface there. That's the MuX mixer, or control individual channels from the channel interface there on the right-hand side. There's also a multi-band compressor. That's right, a multi-band analog compressor. Even has these red dials, these orange dials here, excuse me, for extra saturation you can add in the low, mid, or high bands. What's not to like? Oh, the KD1 Tech Award nominated award saturation compression. That's right. If you guys like cars, this one's for you because it kind of looks like a car. It even shows you the voltage across the rails in the APB and the temperature inside of it. And you can control all the aspects of the saturation circuits inside the APB. Need some EQ? We got you, EQ. This is the Royal Q. 4 bands, you can link them together, mid-side operation, but with a customized analog output circuit to make it sound even better. Then, of course, you can't have the Royal Q equalizer, that's the Royal Mu compressor limiter, dual control, just like the equalizer. Oh, yeah. And you got to have tape. You can't have an analog system without tape emulation, and ours is called tape. So you probably know what it does, and that's all I'm going to say. And there's Bob. That's right, bass optimized bias. Some people say I should have called it the beast of bass. Anyway, if you want to take your low end and make it crazy amazing, this is what you do. Great for post-production for explosions, also for your 808 kicks or whatever you're doing. And then, of course, for those of you who are crazy enough to do any kind of surround work, here's the Royal Muse surround version. Supports up to 9.1.6 channels to dual control. That's right. This is probably the only analog compressor limiter in the world that can handle a Dolby Atmos mix. Wow. And shown at the NAMM show here in 2026 and coming out very soon is the DC2. That's a dual compressor. It's got 2 compressors on the left and 2 compressors on the right. That's right, 2 compressors per channel. And you can blend them together either in series or in parallel with all kinds of cool, fancy controls that we'll talk about another time. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the APB. And now I'm done. And this crazy face you're looking at is going to go away. I'm going to stop my screen share, and we're going to do a demo with the one, the amazing, the guy you should never, ever go on a hike with, Luca Zadra. Let's give it up for him. Yay!
I do see a question in the Q&A, Colin, from Brian Malouf asking, do 10 APB units add up to 40 milliseconds of latency or more or less?
Oh, Brian Malouf. He's a smart guy, but he always asks the tough questions. And that's a great question. If you daisy chain 1 or 5 or whatever APBs together, there is no added latency. Whether you're the first channel in the first APB or the last channel in the last APB, the latency is the same. Generally, the round trip is about 2,000 samples, but that is not from Thunderbolt nor the APB itself, which has no latency because it's an analog processor. That just is us waiting for the DAW to buffer up all the audio, and then we send it over Thunderbolt out to the APB, and it comes right back, and we chuck it right back into the DAW. That's also why we can accommodate a low latency mode for Pro Tools, because the folks over at Avid made a special feature for us in Pro Tools so that you can enable or disable the low latency feature with your APB units. And if you did enable or disable that latency, again, would be the same, whether it was the first channel in the first box or the last channel in the last box that you link together over Thunderbolt. There you go. Whew. That Brian guy's always asking tough questions. Well, he's a smart guy.
All right, let me go ahead and share my screen here. So, yep, he's saying, so only 4 milliseconds total, no matter what, in low latency mode. Yay, thanks, Colin.
Thank you.
But I'm gonna play this, and then if anyone has any issues or doesn't hear it, let us know, please. Okay, so you get the idea of the song. Pretty busy, a lot of drums, a lot of stuff going on. The song is by an artist called DAMOYEE. We call it the acronym song because it's a whole bunch of letters. You can see the IDWF, but you get the idea. You heard the chorus, you see what she's talking about. And as you can see from the status app here, I have used 15 out of my 16 available channels on the APB 16 of APB processing. And the way I use it, philosophically speaking, is more so as a finisher. So I have, for example, 2 channels here of chicken head on the lead vocal. And I have it on the drums and bass bus, doing a little bit of EQ, mid-side EQ here. I have it on the drum bus itself, another chicken head. And I have tape on the drums, the tops, like the hi-hats, the percussions, anything that is kind of high frequency. Tape is really helpful for that kind of stuff. And then I have 2 bobs, one on the synth bass, another one on the live bass. And I believe I have one more on the piano track down here. So the source button, Colin, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's a sort of a bias control. So I guess it changes the frequency response of the compression in itself.
It does. It's also a mistake. Programmable analog is great until you connect the wrong thing to the wrong thing and you blast out a pair of headphones and go, huh, what was that? How do I not do that again? But then you realize actually that's kind of not a bad thing if I can control it. And so it worked out. So yeah, so it sort of has like an on and an off state, but it seemed to work pretty well and it was really interesting. And so yeah, it makes the chicken head sound pretty gosh darn good on vocals. Who knew? Or lots of other things too. It's just a fun biasing feature.
Yeah. So I've definitely noticed that. I mean, it reacts to the sound that you put it through. So when I give it something that is low and heavy, I get more low end out of it when I press it. Sometimes when you get something that is very bright, you get a similar effect where you get even more top end shaping. Yeah, I use this in a very subtle way, but it just gives me that extra 5% that I really struggle plugins or digital plugins to like. I really struggle getting them to do that for me in the way that this does it. I use the chicken head on the drums. Let's go to that next. It's slightly more obvious there sometimes when you use that source button. Bypass this and play it for a little bit. Let me do a smaller selection. I think you definitely heard it though. This is half of the way this track is laid out, by the way. I produced this, so I have it like kind of laid out, whereas like half of the breakbeat is here, and I'm treating the second half of the breakbeat as like my top end. So that's why it feels like the drums are not all the way there, but I'm kind of looking at this as the main stuff that I want in my face. So you can hear it. It's still relatively subtle, but it's a little bit more there. You hear the kick tone change for sure. It feels like even the release time of the kick kind of like it emphasizes that the kind of the noise that's off to the sides to the kick, and the snare is a little bit snappier, just a little bit, jumps a little bit more forward. And again, that's a lot of that is due to the source, because if I turn that off, you'll hear it kind of changing the way the kick is dialed in. So It is subtle, but at this stage of the mix, I'm really just trying to get things to sit in a certain way and sit right with a mix. I'm not so much going after tone changing. And then let me open up the drum tops because this is where we use tape. Tape is sort of like the APB version of analog channel, right? That's kind of like the idea. I mean, there's a lot of
Yeah.
controls here that we're familiar with.
Yep. Yeah. I mean,
Um,
and it's like one, two, it's like three stages of like compression, um, and then a saturation guy at the end. Plus, it has all that low end bump and roll off. You can massage into it. So it is like analog channel. It's way more sophisticated than analog channel. Analog channel is a great plugin, and it definitely is how I came up with tape here. But in this one, we're trying to use all the capacity of what the analog programmable circuit is in the APB to just sort of give you like a sound of a couple of tape machines. I kept it kind of vague as to which models, but the sound of the 70s, the sound of the 80s, your 456 or your GP9 tape. Two formulations I think are probably the most popular. And just to give you some software control over it. But it is again, the APB is not just sort of a nerdy guy's endeavor. It is really, it sounds great. It's really a joy to program. So making things like a tape emulator for it was a lot of fun.
yeah. I love this tape. This thing is pretty, and I still use analog channels. You can see I've have analog channel on these percussions and shakers here, but then when it came to the whole drum top group, which is essentially mostly comprised of this breakbeat, which is supposed to be a halftime kind of like contrasted over the quicker beat. But it just fills it in a little bit more. So I needed the main drums to kind of stay up front, and then I needed this other stuff to stay out back and support the main drums in the front. Because if I kept it out front, it was just getting too busy, and I don't want it to compete with the vocals. So this is really where tape kind of comes in. So I'm gonna go ahead and bypass this, and you'll hear it. I will say pay special attention to the hi-hats that you're gonna hear on your left ear and hear how that gets affected by the tape. The main difference is it just felt like it kind of took those hi-hats and kind of glued them in together into with the rest of the breakbeat. And you're gonna hear how the main reason for this was I wasn't so much listening to these drums when I was tweaking this plugin. I was listening to the vocal and how the vocal sits in the mix in comparison. So a lot of the times when you're kind of tweaking these things and you're going after drums and these instruments, if I'm tweaking that instrument, I'm not actually listening to that instrument. I'm also listening to the vocal and seeing how what my changes to that instrument affect how the vocal sits in the mix. You could see as soon as I engage it, it just felt like all of a sudden the vocal was like came out more and it just had more room to breathe. This because all of that top end information, I used tape to kind of like carve it out in a way that is more dynamic of just EQing it out. Because I don't want to, if I EQ'd it out, it just kind of would make the whole thing dull. I don't want to lose top end. I just needed to shape out of the way of the vocal so that the vocal could still come in through it. And I feel like I usually use GP9 and 80s on most situations, but on this one, I think it's just because of the nature of the song. It's busy. There's a lot of top end percussion going on. I feel like I needed to go a little bit more aggressive and clamp down on that top end a little bit more. So next we have Bob. So Bob is doing quite a bit. Some of you may be familiar with Bob already if you own the 6060. It's the same idea, same processor that's in there, but it has an analog component, which is these last two knobs right here, where you can use the gain knob here to push it, and you get the analog compression, which is monitored by this one right here. So if I were to push this, now I'm monitoring the regular squash compression, but when I push this, now I'm monitoring the compression I get out of here. And these 1 and 2 are sort of like, I suppose, like bias controls, right, Colin? They're like harmonics.
Yes. One is controlling like the style of compression you're going to get at the analog chain at the end. And one is to allow some of the low end compression to fail so you can get more saturation out of the low end that you're causing to be louder by the bias and frequency and controls on the far left of the UI.
Cool. So there you go. So I'm gonna play this bass for a little bit. So there's a synth bass. It's a pretty significant difference, even though I'm not doing much with it. I pushed the bias 0.4%. And this is what's really interesting about this plugin is if I put it on something that doesn't have a lot of low end to begin with, I might push it past that. But something about these kind of synth bass 808s, whatever has a lot of low end already, 0.4% is a lot. It's just kind of giving it that extra beef and that extra push that I wouldn't otherwise get. I don't really get out of a normal EQ. It's not a regular EQ. So I think you all heard that. Really, a lot of it is kind of like giving that extra beef too, using these two. Now, I want to say one, it clamps down more on low ends, and then two does the opposite. It lets out the low end more, so then you get more harmonics out of it. But then you can combine the two, and you get this like extra. It's just fat. It's just big. It just sounds kind of just full. And I want to show you guys what I mean by it. Just really cleans up the low end too. So sometimes I can use this plugin to kind of help me dial in the low ends. And so here it is bypass, and take a look at what it looks like. So you can see it's got its harmonics right here. It's got the fundamental, cool. And on all this low endy stuff below 20 that I really have no use for. So I kind of set the frequency to the lowest note that I'm going to hit with that bass, and then use the bias to dial in how much I want it. And then I don't really use the compression. Most of the time I find I don't want compression on bass, except if it's like that live bass, which we'll get to later. That one is different because it has a lot of attack. I want to control that somehow. But on these kind of things, most of the time I like it to just kind of let it be free. So you can see what's going on down there. Now I'm going to engage it and play it again. And you can see it even looks cleaner. It sounds like beefier. You could see that you cannot get more fundamental power, just kind of more volume out of there. You see you get a little bit more like just kind of more low end, and that's really determined by how much bias you gave it, because I could really push this and go insane. But it mostly cleans up all the stuff that happens beneath. So I don't really know how this works, but it just, you can hear it kind of sweeping through as you go up and down through the frequencies, even when you don't actually boost any low end to it. So I'm gonna go loop these last 4 bars here, and I'll play it with the whole song.
I don't wanna fuck, I just wanna love. Every day sucks, forever's enough for me, yeah, yeah. I don't wanna fuck, I just wanna love. Every day sucks, forever's enough for me, yeah, yeah. I don't wanna fuck, I just wanna love.
Definitely a lot harder to hear in context of everything. So let me try also by removing the music real quick. But you can feel it supporting the track more, getting that like that low end bed kind of dialed in, right? It just kind of feels like it's adding energy to the whole thing without really adding any noticeable sounds in it.
I don't wanna fuck, I just wanna love. Everything sucks. Forever's enough for me, yeah, yeah. I don't wanna fuck, I just wanna love. Everything sucks. Forever's enough for me, yeah, yeah.
You hear it there a lot better. It just makes it fatter. And then I kind of did a similar thing here on this live bass. Very similar settings. I pushed the frequency knob up a little bit more, and then I have a little bit more bias, like 0.8%, very little. It is double as much as I put before though. And let me go ahead and play maybe this section without it. And you can hear, I mean, it's kind of it's a huge difference for the amount that I'm doing, like 0.8%, and then a little bit of gain here, and the harmonics, which I'm then dialing right back here. It's actually doing a lot with so little. And that's sometimes what I mean with analog does more than you ask it to, but it's always more forgiving when you go too far. It just it just works. I don't really know how I would have achieved this with a plugin too. Like, sure, I would have used the Bob in the 6060 channel, but then the second half of that is getting those harmonics and getting that whole thing to fill up the full spectrum. That becomes trickier. That becomes a lot more difficult to do in pure digital. And that's why I love this thing. Let me try in with everything except the music, just the vocals, drums, and bass.
Care about the space in the back of your SUV. What happened to chivalry? What happened to keeping it classy? Care about the space in the back of your SUV. What happened to chivalry? What happened to keeping it classy? Care about the space in the back of your SUV. What happened to chivalry? What happened to keeping it classy? Care about the space in the back of your SUV. What happened to chivalry? What happened to keeping it classy?
Right there, it just kind of makes the whole thing fatter. Beast of Bass. That was a good name. And I think the second to last place I use the APB here is on a piano. Piano is obviously a main driver in the song. It's there throughout. So let's hear it real quick without. So it's doing quite a bit right here too to the piano. I mean, the piano is a pretty important instrument to this song, especially because it's really the kind of the only harmonic component of the song in the verse, in at least this first verse, and then kind of supports the whole rest of the song throughout. So I needed it to go from you heard it when it was bypassed. It was kind of like there, kind of timid, kind of in the background doing this thing. I needed to like come forward and be like, no, I'm here, motherfucker. Like, stand 10 toes. And I kind of that's really the purpose of this compressor. I really like it. It looks familiar to a lot of people. Obviously, there is a digital version of it in the 6030 in the 60s collection. And it, all reminds us of a particular plugin that we all know, compressor that we all know of visually. But one thing about the APB is they're all unique. Like while some of the things look like something you may recognize, they don't sound like it. They're not meant to sound like it. They're meant to sound like their own thing. And but here's one thing that you wish you could do with your analog gear and your original Fairchilds and everything like that. I have automation on it because we get to the end of the song. I'm gonna play it. It transitions into like an outro that is completely different from what we have in the song before, and we have some extra piano sounds in there, and we don't have lead vocals in that outro section. So I kind of wanted the piano to come forward a little bit more and fill that space up left behind by the lead vocal there. So and you get the idea. So I really just automated the threshold to go down a little bit and allow more of the piano to be kind of uncompressed for a couple of reasons, because we also have this extra keyboard coming in. And when everything was there, it just felt like it was clamping down on it a little bit too much. And like I said, there's no lead vocal here now. I don't need that space for the vocal. So I can have the piano come up a little bit and fill it in. And you can see right here, I'm automating the threshold to go down, and you ultimately get less compression. And that's one thing you just cannot do with actual analog. And this is where the APB really shines, is you can do all of these things, use them like you would a plugin, but you're still analog. And then at the end, obviously, we go through your whole mix bus processing and stuff. And then, the way this session is laid out, this was an older template, but it still applies. One of the track will get recorded here, and then I have a limiter on here, the APB L18 limiter on the print track right here, which then will print a unlimited version and a limited version. So I have both, and I usually send both to the mastering engineer. It really depends. On this particular song, I sent them both, and he ended up working off of the unlimited one. But in the previous one, in the previous song I did for this artist, the limited version, that was my favorite. I didn't even want the mastering engineer to go off with the unlimited one. There's something about the way the limited caught the peaks in that one. I was like, oh, this is perfect. So I just sent that one. And a lot of the times, mastering engineers, when I work with, for example, Joe Laporta, he a lot of times will go off of the limited version, because I don't usually do a lot on that anyway. In this case, this track was mastered by Mike Tucci. He worked off the limited mix in the first song, and then this song he worked off the unlimited, because in this one I also felt like he can probably beat it. Like this is cool for me to send to the artist so they can hear it loud, but I think he might be able to beat the final limited. And then you can see it here. Let's go to the chorus, and I'm gonna bypass it. It's really straightforward. The only button I didn't engage the color, which is kind of cool because you can make things brighter or darker. But I really just engaged the release knob to be as quick as it could. And I, kept it hard knee. Just gave it a little bit of extra boost, and it's only catching about a dB and a half of gain reduction. Not a whole lot, but it's just, you kind of want the artist to be able to listen to that. And the whole point too is when you get to this stage, because obviously they've been sitting with the rough, you want to be able to kind of match it. Now I still turn down the rough a little bit. It has a different EQ profile than the original rough. So that's why I turned it down, so the vocal will kind of sit at a similar level. but you can hear the difference.
I wanna fuck, I just wanna love. I don't wanna fuck, I just wanna love.
And obviously there's a big difference there. Now that's more of a difference than I might normally go with, but for one, I produced the song, so I have a different relationship with the artist. I have a lot more liberty when it comes to like pushing the song in a certain direction. And also this was not my rough mix. When I did produce it, then I sent her the stems and then she did a rough mix, which is like, not nowhere near where she liked, where she wanted it to sit. So knowing where the artist wants to go with it, I could take a lot more liberties with it. In other scenarios, sometimes the rough, you have to stay a lot closer to the rough as way more than you might want to. But yeah, that's the idea. This is pretty much where the APB came in this particular session. If you guys have any questions, I guess you could go ahead, type it in the Q&A. It looks like there might be a couple of questions here. Maybe Colin, you might want to answer.
All right. I'll start from the top with Charlie asked about any plans for collaboration with other companies. Sure. We'd be quite happy to make anybody else's, device if they want to have an APB version of it. Why not? Just have to let me know and I'll take a look. If that's what you mean. If that's not what you meant, let me know. Oh, Brian Maloof again. So I could have 10 APB plugins on a single track and then 6 remaining, or I could use one plugin. Yeah, if, for example, like the limiter, this L18 Luca has up, looks like he's using it on the stereo tracks. He's going to use 2 channels of his APB. If you had like the Royal Muse surround in a 9.1.6 configuration, well, that's 16 channels and you're going to use 16. So that's how that works. Sometimes, like in the case of the upcoming DC2, that's 2 fully controllable compressors in 1 channel, which the APB can do. So if you use a mono version of that, it's 1 channel. Use a stereo version of it, it'll be 2 channels. That plug is not quite done yet, so we'll see how it all turns out. But again, we're just trying to hope I answered that question, Brian. And then yes, the last one, yeah, whatever latency you choose, if you use the APB plugins in low latency mode, they're all in that low latency mode across the session. And so, yeah, if you choose the lowest latency setting, might be like 256. I think you can go even lower. Whatever your Pro Tools rig wants to do, the APB will follow along with that. But yeah, so whatever the latency is that you've selected from the APB low latency mode, that'll be the latency across all the APB plugins in your session. Now, like the limiter, for example, it does use a little bit of look ahead because it's a limiter, but that limiting is also like, I think around 1 millisecond. That would be the other patent group from McDSP. For those of you who don't know, way back in 2007, we made a limiter called the ML4000, which would do all the limiting in a different way, such that you'd only need like one, instead of like, I don't know, 2,000 samples to look ahead, or many, many milliseconds, we could do it, almost just under 1 millisecond and get even less distortion or whatever. So it's an interesting algorithm to put into an analog process and then sort of listen to it and go, wow, that sounds pretty good too. Why Luco? Got it. Sorry about that. Yes, you just meant how you were quickly using all 40 channels almost. Yeah. I think that's just the thing, is that if people like the sound of their APB, well, then they're going to use it. And then all of a sudden, wait a minute, I just went through 32 channels. How'd that happen? You gotta, and so it's, in fact, all of our, a lot of our clients are just return customers who, I bought an APB 16, I need another one. I'm like, great, and it's just because they like it and they're using a lot of it. But thank you, Luco, for chiming in with some of your appreciation for our product. We did spend many years working on it, so glad to see someone else as excited about it as we are. It's just like magic, folks, and unlimited power. I'll stop talking.
I forgot to talk about the Royal Q because I forgot I used it.
Okay.
But let me just go over this super quick. I put it on the drums and bass, on the bus where the drums and bass meet. And full disclaimer about this, obviously we cannot fit all the op amps and everything that needs to go in the APB to make it fully analog EQ. I mean, you can, but then that's a whole separate box. and it becomes way bigger. And heating is a whole other issue. So the way McDSP does it is we have a phenomenal EQs that we've always had for almost the 30 years that McDSP has been around, and just kind of put them in an analog format where the EQ is digital, but it's going through saturation boards on the analog side, which is really most of an EQ sound comes from the saturation circuitry that follows it or precedes it. So the way I use this is I'm gonna solo the drums and bass real quick, and I'll mute this, and you're gonna notice one interesting thing. So it's in mid-side mode right now, where I'm just kind of taking a little bit of 1K here, boosting a little bit of the lows ever so slightly, and of the highs around here, and then doing some like side EQ, taking some of the low end off the sides, stuff that is, gonna here it's gonna kind of compete with the piano and those kind of instruments, and then filling in these kind of spaces up here. So what's interesting about this is by itself, it sounds worse. Like, not the EQ in itself, but like the decisions that I made with the EQ, like in a normal scenario, I'd be like, well, that's too bad because I missed the snare now kind of being in my face the way it was before. And it's not as evident now. But there's a reason for that. It's when I put it in with the vocals, I don't want to compete with the vocals. The vocals is the important part. So this is where this comes in. So listen to how the vocal now sits with the drums and bass.
I don't wanna fuck, I just wanna love. I don't wanna fuck, I just wanna love.
It just gives it more space. Let me, for example, go right here where the vocal is even busier.
Message clear enough, buddy, yaddy, yaddy's all you want. Message clear enough, buddy, yaddy, yaddy's all you want. Message clear enough, buddy, yaddy, yaddy's all you want. Message clear enough, buddy, yaddy, yaddy's all you want.
That's it. I just didn't want the vocal to have to compete with so much stuff going on in the song to have its moment. The vocal still needs to be on top, and I need to be able to hear what she's saying and all of that. So it's one of those things where it's like if I had tweaked this by itself, I would have gotten a way different result and then would have impeded with the song as a whole. So when I tweak these things, I'm doing it with the vocal in and everything. So I can hear how the vocal is gonna then sit in the mix depending on what I'm doing with the other instruments. And you get into some cases where, in itself, like I kind of like the sound of it before by itself when it was muted. I didn't need this in there. But with a vocal and everything, it opens up space. It gives me that breathing room, and it fills in by using the mid side and giving these boosts around here. I can fill in the sides a little bit to almost make up for that. But the holes that I'm carving in the middle for the vocal to sit through, I can kind of fill that in onto the sides, and it feels like a more better rounded overall experience. But that's it. That was my last talking point. I don't see any other questions here, so I think we should be okay.
Luca, those are behind the scenes that are making this webinar happen. Thanks to those folks doing so at McDSP. But I was reminded to mention that the APB has been on sale, but that sale is concluding this Friday, February 20th. So if you want to have unlimited power, you can actually save some money and still get unlimited power or really close to it. Anyway, I want to make sure we mention that. Also, let's give it up for Luke, everybody. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in.
Okay.
Thank you, McDSP, for hosting.
Thank you, Luca. Thank you very, very much. If there are no other questions, then I guess thanks, everybody. Thank you, Luca. And thanks to all the folks back at the main office, where apparently power is also still on, and we've been able to host this webinar.
Yeah, it worked out.
It did work out. Oh, okay. Bye, everybody. Thanks for coming.